Blessings and welcome, everyone. I'm so very excited for today's 4D Trinity for our show this morning. Today I'm welcoming a very special guest, the Purple Wizard with WizardTribe333. We are going to have a beautiful conversation all about planetary grids, earth grids, ley lines, and we're going to talk about his experiences. He's going to share with us his experience with these earth grids and with these ley lines and how we can access this energy, and really we already do in so many ways, maybe unconsciously, to make a connection with that powerful electromagnetic field that is of this planet and that we are a part of as well. Now here at 4D Trinity, we are all about fourth dimensional consciousness. Fourth dimensional consciousness is that consciousness of the heart center. It is that fourth chakra. It is the awakening of that Christ, of that unlimited power within, that is rooted in the now moment, that is rooted in the miracle, rooted in the divine synchronicity, yes. The divine synchronicity and happenstance of all. I'm so excited. Here he is. Okay, we're going to get him with us. Whoop, whoop. I'm going to turn up my volume. I'm so excited. So very excited.
Hello.
Right. Blessings, brother.
Hi, blessings.
Thank you so very much for being here today, for offering your time and sharing your experience with us.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for hosting the space and facilitating.
Yes, absolutely. So I was just sharing with the community that fourth dimensional consciousness, I know this show, we had a little conversation on the phone about it, and just for clarity, what my work is to anchor with these teachings and with these live streams is all about that awakening of the fourth dimensional consciousness of the heart center, the one heart that we all share, the residing and abiding in the now momentary of sacred geometry that is within all of us and a part of all of us. And I love how I was guided to you. I don't even know how. And then I started checking out your postings about how you would go on these little adventures and set up grids at sacred sites or sacred places that you would be guided, and you would work with setting up crystals, being with the earth, with the land. And I'm like, oh, this dude's tapped in. I remember at the very beginning when I was starting to learn Reiki 20 years ago, and coming into contact with the idea of setting up a grid of crystals under the healing table and really working consciously with the energies that are already here, to activate, to amplify, and synchronize the highest good. And so more and more checking out your posts and just like getting a sense of your just everything that you're guided to share. And then thank you so much. I am grateful to have participated at a meditation you did last weekend for the solstice, which was just gorgeous, and to meet your community. So many beautiful open hearts. So that's a bit of a long intro. I'm so grateful and excited to get to know you and to just like share with our communities, and really connect the dots of what is my sort of like my another aspect of the anchoring of the teachings that I share is about the grid matrix of collective consciousness and how we can learn to master that, to abide in that nowness of the heart. And I'm excited to get in conversation with you because we know it's connected, but then to have the talk about how that connection between the earth grids is connected to that collective consciousness of griddery that we are in. And so welcome, and please, where would you like to begin? I'm curious how this all started for you.
Well, first I'd like to say thank you for all you do, and thank you for bringing it to that heart space. I'd like to dedicate today's live to my grandfather George. Today, he passed 3 years ago. Today is his birthday. So speaking of heart space, to all of us and all the soul fam out there moving through this shift, and all the souls that have passed on that watch over us, dedication to you as well. Just a fitting day to be doing this, where we're connecting the heart with the grid and the collective. We're moving through a huge shift, a big purge. We're all releasing a lot, and one of the huge things today that came through for me when I was laying face first crying on the floor because I missed my grandfather was basically the grief is something to release and to sit with and hold are the beautiful lessons and wisdom and teachings that you learn. And I think that's all something that we can integrate right now as we are grieving the end of an age and all the things that no longer serve us, and stepping forward with love, working in total conjunction with our soul family and with the collective, with our Mother Earth and with Source. And thank you so much for the recognition and for seeing me. I see you too. I really enjoyed our conversation the other night. Everything you're doing resonates strongly. Yes, I love how we're all guided to connect, and then there's just so many synchronicities. It's amazing, and we mentioned the other night twinning, and I feel there's so many conversations happening with so much soul family where that is happening. So it's going, it's growing. Yeah, thank you for supporting. I'm happy to be a part of this, and happy to be supporting all of us working together. As far as how I got started, I don't know. That's really short version. Been connected for a long time through my lineage and woke up to it really in my early 20s, and about 2015 started to step into my power, and then Lionsgate last year was a huge activation. And when I first found the Becker-Hagens grid, which is what I posted today, it's a Google Earth plugin. You can find it at Vortex Maps. It's free. It's amazing. I've plotted many places on Earth. If you're interested in getting those, let me know. But I found that and started plotting all the places, all the sacred sites, and then it evolved into plotting all the places I've been around the world. And almost to a T, when I started to go back and look when I had major activations, they're almost all on like lines or clusters during celestial events. So that really started me on the path of honoring and offering and being in touch. And as we're doing that, being aware of what's happening around us, because everything is here for us to see. So that's kind of a short story. I could go on and on, but I think that kind of covers enough bases for this.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And so through your awakenings, your activations, then that communication, what I'm getting is whatever the communication that was already there with the planet seemed to amplify. And so before that period of time, maybe before 5 years ago, there wasn't so much of those downloads to do the crystal grids or to be at certain sites on the earth, like where it was clear. But before that, maybe just more intuitive, you would go to these places, and then looking back, you realize like, whoa, there's a cluster of earth grid lines there. There was some PowerPoints going on. And I feel that that's for a lot of us, because I know I'm guided to certain places just in my weekly day-to-day hikes and meditations and conversations I have with earth and rock out here in the desert where I live. And after talking to you, I'm like, oh, I want to check out and see what's clustering around there. And also the divine wisdom with what you're saying of then getting those intuitive downloads of really, is it you're feeling like the earth talking to you and guiding and saying, place such and this crystal here, that crystal there. Is that kind of how it works for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the intuition part is huge. That's very key. I didn't know. I mean, I knew on a soul level, but on conscious ego level, I had no idea. It was just things were lining up, and I was having very profound moments. There was a Buddhist temple I was at in Shanghai, and I couldn't move from this one spot looking at it, and I now know that it was a past life I was having memories of when I was there, but I had no idea. And then when I just felt like I saw these people going up and doing this incense, and I didn't know what they were doing, but I felt like I had to do something, so I watched and waited, and then I went and like did the same thing, and just kind of like walked out those grounds. It was somewhat touristy, but there was like tourists, and then there was the Buddhists that were there to honor it. I just kind of walked in reverence with whatever they were doing and felt like intuitively guided to do that. And then as I began to become aware of it, yeah, it was absolutely tapping into the Earth's energy. A lot of it for me was paying attention to what's happening around me with animals or what I see, what I hear, and then being aware of where I'm guided, like sitting down and feeling the space. And a lot of it, too, is connecting with the stars and Source, essentially. So song and dance involved, but as I started getting that awareness, all this started to come together, because I'd be like, oh, I see something moving in the sky, but not really realizing, oh, I'm on this sacred spot, and there's an eclipse, and And then all the pieces started to come together. And this year, I had a plan to go somewhere for each equinox and solstice, but that obviously is not happening. So I feel like being where I am is important right now. And just really, I love hearing what you're saying about intuitively being guided to these spaces, and I think that's key. Like, anybody who's doing this is being plugged in that way and communicating with our mother as we're energetic beings having a physical experience, connecting in our heart space, the earth and source. We can be guided to the places that are meant for major activations. And these are not just personal activations. These are activations on a collective soul level and earth level that's shifting the paradigm.
Yeah, amen. I fully agree. We're all connected. And, one thing affects the other. And like we were saying in our conversation the other night about, us, our individual beings being like little acupuncture needles. And when we really listen and follow and trust that divine insight or guidance to be somewhere, to go somewhere. And it does get profound. Now, we were talking like that we assume that other people are like us, like having the kinds of experiences we have. And I guess at the beginning, it's very profound. And then it just becomes normal when you hear the guidance to go to this particular area, to sit, to pay attention, to listen with Mother Earth. That just becomes second nature to do those little mini adventures. But really, I do resonate fully with what you're saying, because there is a coherency then that happens through us in connection with that earth wisdom that feels that it ripples out then through the planet. And in this way, this is what makes me think about that grid matrix of collective consciousness, which is all of our minds joined through all time, space, and dimension. And how really, the more we come into that coherent resonance with Mother Earth, we're actually creating the correct conditions for the most high timelines without trying to control it or figure out or think what it's supposed to be, but just through nature, contributing to the most divine timelines that are going to then be available to us as we inhabit and exist here.
I love that.
Yeah, right?
We're all little needles on the acupuncture point, and then we're doing the work without having attachment to the outcome. Because you mentioned control. Control essentially is us trying to define what we want. And in my work, I've noticed, I think I shared with you the other night, when I see something or experience something and I start, what is that? Blah, 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 and I start trying to find it, all of a sudden that connection is broken. So it's like being in that spot of holding heart space with gratitude for whatever experience you're having at the time. And that, I feel, is really what is moving us toward this optimal timeline, as you so nicely put it.
Yes, and isn't it like an interesting thing, because even if we've been doing this kind of work for some time or for many lifetimes even, there's a divine grace that comes that I think maybe there can be a sense of like, and I put this in a bubble of light because I don't mean to project or there's no judgment, but just there can be a sense with spiritual stuff of like, I want to enlighten now. I want to have that third eye open now. There's a degree of that grittery going on. Yet in the grace of listening and that non-attachment, and when you do go and you have whatever ceremony you may be guided to do, even if it's just that the plant guides you to actually pluck that flower, to walk with it to a certain point and then to place it on that rock, and that's the work, that is doing something. And maybe whatever you're getting from being there, you might be trying to figure it out. Or we in a sense might be trying to figure it out. Yet the grace is just letting it be. And then in time, there's like, and it's when we leave space for the ahas, that's when it's like, look. And I feel like so many things then connect when we let go of trying to have things a certain way and figure it out. So I'm fully in resonance with you of just like trusting that, and serving. Like you said on the phone the other night, it was so beautiful, where you're just like, it's all in service. It's all in service. So tell us a little bit about then, and for anyone new here, at WizardTribe333, scroll through his account, because there's really cool pictures of where you've been out in nature, and you actually show us the grid, the Earth planetary grid lines, and then you'll show us like a little crystal cluster or a little mandala kind of a thing that you would put together there. And so explain to us, especially for folks where this is a whole new vocabulary, what happens there, what's the intention, and what comes to pass from doing that?
Okay. So That's a good question. All of that is part of, initially it was a lot of work with crystals. My mother got me into them when I was younger, and I put them away for a number of years, and then they came back out, and it was just like everywhere. But it was like when they came back out, I started to kind of look at them a different way. Instead of it was just this cool thing from Earth, it was like, oh, this has vibration to it. It transmits light. It can transmit sound. And I had discovered the Metatron's cube a number of years ago, or it came into my awareness. I mean, it's not a discovery, right? Personal awareness. And when I found that, I realized that a lot of the stuff that I was doing had those shapes to it, like when I built with that grid. So I started to look at it from a symbol perspective, right? So in this physical form, symbols are very important as they can transmit ideas and communication and vibration without speaking or comprehension through words, letters, or language. So initially it was just building grids and meditating to them, and I would build a big chakra grid to begin with just to kind of do all that. And then as it grew, I started to resonate and I found crystals coming into my life in a big way, and they'd come in at times when I was processing a lot or there was things going on. And when I first discovered going to places that were sacred, I started to look at it as, I'm lucky enough to be on this land, so I want to come and lead some offerings to it and just be grateful to share this experience of abundance. And so it really started with just bringing small stones and meditating and, building a grid. But at that point, it was just like, I'm going to go meditate outside and build a grid, And then over time, Earth, the crystals come from Earth. They've been here before us. They'll be here after us. There's definitely consciousness to them. You can connect with them if you choose to in meditation. And what I find is, if I try and plan something, it just leads to anxiety and stress. And I used to be like, oh man, I'm going to do this big earth healing meditation. Let me write a whole list of everything I have to bring. And now I just go down to my wizard's lair and basically just walk around and find whatever calls to me. That's not to say that I don't have intention. If for summer solstice, my intention for going there, and that was my most recent post with the grid. It's on a ley line that comes through Chicago, and I've started working there 2 years ago. And this time that I went there, I really wanted to anchor in Lemurian energy, the last golden age on the upswing, and heart chakra stuff, and crown chakra. So I brought, and I didn't really intentionally bring this, but I intentionally brought one of them, a big cluster, but I brought some Lemurian, some Moldavite, and some amethyst wands. And the intention with this was, this is the summer solstice. It was a major portal, and the sun lines up and brings light in. This is the first place it touches before it brings light into Chicago and along the line over Lake Michigan. So there's a huge body of water there. So my intention was to leave a big crystal out there. It was a crystal I got from somebody named Atlantis Connection who passed away not too long ago. We love you, miss you, Taylor. Thanks for watching over that crystal. So it had Atlantis energy and Lemurian energy, and when I swam out there to leave it, I dove down. It was really deep, and then I picked the crystal up. I was like, I received with great sneeze, and I said, I released with great sneeze, which was hard. I had to say it twice, and then I let it go, and it went down. It landed on this wooden platform 8 feet down, so it picked its own throne to sit on. So really, intuitively, these things have consciousness, and they're part of Earth, and they know where they want to go. But that's to begin with, just go leave offerings, song, dance, meditate, spend time with friends, and build things out of what's there. You will be guided to, the land will unlock itself and share with you. The Earth has 7 chakra points, then it has I don't know what that number, 6 other gateways that lead up to 13. So if the Earth chakras are healthy, the gateways are healthy, then it activates your whole auric field, which are the ley lines. I don't know where I'm going with that right now.
Just repeat for me one more time. It activates the whole what for the ley lines? What was that word or that set of words?
The Earth's aura, her auric field. So the ley lines, the grid, are essentially her aura.
Yes, and this is like that electromagnetic energy, that frequency that is the earth, that is us, that is everything, and that it feels that all science and everything is pointing to that is just, when that is allowed to be at its maximal, that is, or just in its natural state, that's the full potential. That's the full enchilada. That's the full awakening of the highest frequency that we can channel, and that are resonance that create coherence in our bodies and our minds for health, for healing. And I love how you, again, just this, I think we both get it. And I think this part of the conversation is important in, you will be provided for. And I know at the beginning, when I used to do these little journeys and stuff too, it would be like with the satchel and like, okay, do I have this? Do I have the essential oil? Do I have the little this, that? And then over time, like exactly what you're saying, like they might just tell you to take, one or two things. And then if you, and when you surrender and really connect with your environment there, like she will say, go to this tree, look behind it and under this thing. And then you'll be like, oh my God, this thing over here. And then, she's got all these gifts, and the divine wisdom will show you what to do. And there's so much power in that. And I just want to acknowledge any of our communities that have had those ahas, even if it's in your front yard, your backyard, your regular little trail that you hike in your local community, that if you have those downloads, you're not cray-cray. You're tapping in, it's tapping into you. And as you're divinely guided, as it's authentic and sincere for your path, I encourage you to trust it, because it just unlocks a whole other dimension of mystic, the mystic aspect of our being that, again, is that awakening in the heart center, which is trusting. It doesn't have to make sense in that moment or to have a logical configuration. And I also love what you're saying then, talking about the dancing or the song. And there's so many, we got Stonehenge, we have pyramids, not just in Egypt, but all over the world. And so many sacred sites that, and I'm not, that this is not my area of research, but now after this conversation today, I'm going to make it more of my area of research. But it's, so why then have us, I feel that if we feel that we've been here before, perhaps those civilizations are just us from in the past that have done this, and it feels recognized these channels, because aren't the grids and the ley lines, they're like channels of chi is what came to me in my meditation. Channels of chi. And when we work consciously, just like our physical bodies, we get acupuncture or we do yoga to open the channels so more prana or life force and chi can flow, greater health, mind, body, emotions, etc. And it's almost like it feels that the work that perhaps you're called to do, or that many are called to do in that way, is like that acupuncture point. It's when you're called to make that cluster and be in a certain area and place that crystal or do that ceremony, that you are serving. You're serving as a human physician, as it was, for the greater good, in creating the correct conditions for greater chi to flow. Then through the meridians of the earth. Am I on the right path there?
Yeah, I think there's a great. I'd like to also acknowledge all ancestors, elders, First People, Indigenous people who left these for us to remember now. These are all signs, and where we are now with consciousness on Earth, that was not allowed to be any more flourish in this current civilization. So I'd like to acknowledge that all this stuff that I'm tapping into has been done, and we're remembering it. And I think what you said is a great point, that as energetic beings that have an electromagnetic presence here in this physical form, energy never is destroyed. It is just recycled and transmuted into other forms. So the possibility of this energy that is inhabiting this body having inhabited other bodies is very likely as well amongst the whole soul family. So we're the ones we've been waiting for, and with that, we left everything that we need to remember. So I'm very grateful to all First Nations, elders, and Indigenous people here in the Amazon, in Australia, who, facing persecution and genocide and obliteration, have still carried on their traditions, for all of us as a family to remember right now. The song and the dance aspect, when I was a child, a lot of it was influenced by what I would see. I didn't have any access to powwows or anything, but whatever I saw or remembered or had visions of. And then you mentioned something else, surrender. I think that's so key, because at a certain point, it's not about what we want or what is happening outside. It's just about surrendering to life. And if we can surrender to life and the flow, it puts us in that moment of divine grace and divine being and divine presence where everything flows with grace and ease, and you're just in the pocket, in the moment, and flowing through the land. And I think that's so important, and that's really what chi and prana is about. We have it in abundance. It's completely free. You can't, right, not yet are they charging us for air. So right now, if you look at air and how we bring prana and chi in, it's abundant and free, and earth is abundant. So as we are holding this space of prana and chi in presence, and doing that, we're immediately connected to our higher selves. We are working with these ley lines or grid lines or grid matrix. It's essentially just a series of repeating fractals and shapes that manifest life into physical form. So yeah, when we go to these spaces, we're honoring that prana and that chi. And if you look around, so earth chakras, I mentioned them earlier. The Muladhara, the root chakra, is at Mount Shasta. The sacral chakra, the Svadhisthana, is at Lake Titicaca. Perrier. Is at Lake Titicaca. And then, which also the lines from that cluster extend out into like the Nazca lines, into Machu Picchu, into, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, Tiwanaku. But all of those areas there, Cusco. And then the solar chakra is in Uluru in Australia. And then the heart chakra is just above the UK, but it goes down through all of the sacred sites there. And the throat chakra is just above Giza and the Nile, and it goes all through there. And then the third eye is at Stonehenge right now, so it's in that same area. And then the crown chakra is in Mount Kailash, which is where Shiva is said to reside. It's the holiest mountain in the area to Jainism. I'm not saying that right either. Jainism, to Hinduism and Buddhism. Reinhold Messner, who is the most renowned alpinist in the world, won't climb that mountain and said nobody should climb it because it's not supposed to be climbed. So there's these places where we built things and things happen naturally occurring, and this is where the prana and the chi flows through in abundance. And when you start working with it, you can look at the grid and see it all as lines, but that's not actually accurate. It's like rivers and streams. They ebb and they flow according to celestial events, and you can anchor in energy at certain places. That's what a lot of these natural formations are about. It's the earth expressing that abundance of life and chi in that area, or we are going there and building something to acknowledge that and express it. If you think about where the throat chakra is, the Nile River is right there, So it's like there's all these natural formations that this chi is coming through. And the chi is, her auric field is just an interface for celestial energy from source and planets and everything to come through and interact with. So when you are on these lines or near these lines, you'll often notice that the veil is extremely thin. And you will have experiences. I mean, I have had many experiences and have been with people having experiences of sitting in that awareness, things coming to them, maybe in their mind's eye or actually in physical reality. And as we tap into that, I love how you're putting it, it's like the Earth's chi. As we tap into that Earth's chi by being in our own, we just raise that vibration. And one of the signs that you are in a highly vibrational area is there will be a lot of abundant life. Life loves to be in a space of high consciousness.
Yeah, I hear you. I remember even just as a metaphor to that, we were talking and I was sharing a few of my little rainbow adventures from 98 to 2000. And I remember hitchhiking in Greece with a truck driver, and we went through like a 100-mile period where I was laying in the back kind of napping, and then I woke up and I was and I started bawling, and it was the middle of the night, and he spoke I spoke broken German, and he spoke a little German. He was a Greek man, and I had another sister I was hitchhiking with where she spoke Swiss, and so between the three of us figuring it out, and I was like, what's going on? Freaking out, and I'm trying to look out, and he's sharing, and we're breaking it down, and what had happened is that was an old nuclear reactor area where things went wrong. And the land for like 100 miles, I mean, you could feel, I could feel the earth, like just her sadness and her like grieving and her purging and processing. just that, whatever all that frequency was. And at that time, I could really feel it in juxtaposition then, 600 miles down the road, where the water diviners are finding water, which I want to ask you about. And, there's abundance of food and fruit trees and just beauty and, grace and wildlife and stuff. And so this is obviously, I haven't looked it up or anything, but I'm thinking when we lived on the mountain, there were cats with, they'd get the sticks and the water divining, and they would find little sources of water for us living on the mountain. And so are they tapping those earth grids to do that?
Yeah, so a lot of it is electromagnetism and revolves around water. So Freddie Silva, who is an expert on this, and I've learned so much from, what an amazing soul to be here sharing his wisdom and knowledge. He goes to a lot of these sites. And one of the things that he talks about is how most of the ones that you go to that are sacred tend to have some kind of stone. It's either usually a local stone or something that's been brought in that has very specific qualities. It sometimes will have iron in it. Sometimes it will be, a lot of times it's granite or quartz because it's just such a highly resonant stone. And then in conjunction with the water that is there, it creates an electromagnetism, magnetic attraction. So when people are dowsing, they're in attunement with that electromagnetic frequency to find the water. The water wants to be found. We are water. When we embody that aspect of being water and acknowledging that we are water and treating the water with love and respect, then yes, we will find it through dowsing. And I want to bring that into something else. We talked about in the conversation about the Hopi tribe and the rainbow prophecy. Someone shared another one with me recently. I'm not remembering it right now, but if we think about what happened with DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, that was all about protecting water, and it brought family together from around the world that were rainbow. And when we start talking about this rainbow, it's also a rainbow energy. Rainbow energy is associated with Kundalini, which is associated with serpent energy. And there are two main lines on Earth, and it's the divine masculine serpent line and the divine feminine serpent line. And those are the ones that go through, and at Lake Titicaca and Uluru is where they connect. So that's at the sacral chakra and the solar chakra. So when we're working with this life force and chi, we're also tapping into this rainbow vibration of Kundalini, which, if you look at what the catechist is, it's basically a template for human ascension and enlightenment and awakening. So when we move beyond this lower conscious frequency that we're inhabiting right now and remember our divinity, that's when we unlock and actually inhabit this new earth, Shambhala, because that never leaves. That frequency is here. It's just us tapping back into it.
Oh, I love that. I love everything. Yes, absolutely. And that's it. It feels that the teachings that I share about that fourth dimensional consciousness of the heart center, it's an interdimensional shift, and it's always here. Heaven on earth. We don't have to make ourselves, see heaven and do this and that, but simply create the correct conditions within ourselves. And if we're called within the planetary, field of the earth in honor with her, and it's naturally, it's a natural byproduct. It's a frequency shift, and it's like all timelines. It's all here. Whatever you want, all the fear, all the violence, all the war, or not. Everything that is just love and only love. And it's a whole other dimension. It's a whole other dimension of existence, and I absolutely love that. And to be with that earth energy. And I know we were talking about, the being guided. I have these crystal skull earrings I was telling you about, these little quartz. And there was that meeting. I had an aha after we had our conversation that, because I was sharing, and I'll share with everyone that years ago, probably 15 years ago, there was a Crystal Skull conference at the LAX Hilton, a whole 3-day weekend thing, where cats from all over the world brought their skulls, and little meetings and all that. And I was invited to sit at a round table with these elders and these masters. I didn't know who these people were, and I had my 2 little crystal skulls. They all had these big skulls on the circle table, and here I am putting my little 2 skulls down, and it was kind of a funny moment. But after our conversation, because I looked him up, and who did I get to sit by? Who I didn't know who this person was at the time, and I wrote it down. Hun Bat Men. He's a Mayan elder who holds a lot of space for the crystal skulls, and for the ones in the one that they hold space for and that represent their teachings and the frequencies that they hold and that they anchor to earth. I didn't know who this person was at the time, but I was sat next to him, and as I told you, I got to ask him a question, and I said, "What is shamanism?" He just said, "Nature," which I love. But after our conversation, Wizard, I'm sitting outside and I'm going like, thinking about these little skulls, and I was like, oh, whoa, they were in a circle 15 years ago with all those other skulls, and then telling you that there was a certain point, because I've had these since 2010, that there was a certain point, no, that doesn't make sense then if it was 2010. Let me think. Shane's got to remind me. I know the timeline syncs up, but I was sharing with you that there was a certain point that I was guided to bury these little crystal skulls in the mama rock, the earth, where I've been called to do a lot of work, and leave them there for a period of time, and then regroup and use them again. And I think there's so many things like that for so many of us that may be called to do those things, or that already do those things without being aware of it, and how that is us syncing up with that frequency, with nature, with that wisdom. That's why the elders, the ancient civilizations, they all, worshipped and made sacred space, sacred dance, sacred song to the earth, to the sun, to the planets, and really in great reverence, because they recognized that in doing so, it created the correct conditions for the great harvest, for the perfect health, for the blessings of their communities and their families. And so I love this work that you are called to do, and for you sharing this with us today, because it's bringing us back to that level of awareness. And it doesn't matter if we have technology and phones and all this stuff, we can still turn the phone off and go and do that work as we're called. And so, I love that story about the skull, or the big stone that you were called to place in the body of water, and how, sometimes we think it's supposed to be somewhere, and then it'll show us, no, I'm supposed to go over here, and it's that letting go of us thinking that we know, and letting that divine wisdom guide, and how it found its place, its throne, which might have been different from where you had originally thought it might or should have been placed. And I think that's such a powerful medicine for us to keep in mindfulness with, of it's really the listening. It's the listening and the trusting of the path. Let's see, what else do we have here?
So on that note, I love that about nature, because nature exists without us controlling it. So it's as soon as we get in that mind state of, I love this crystal, it goes right here, or this is mine, it's like they go where they want to go, and if you release them and they come back to you, that's how it's meant to be for that point, is you being a steward. And I feel like to honor nature is bringing back gifts to nature. So one of the things that really resonates with me when I go is just being there. Most of the places I've found, or things I've found these, happened because I was picking up garbage, So honoring that space that you're on, I try to always bring something to pick garbage up with. And I found feathers, and just being still in that moment and offering service to nature, returning back, putting your hands in the dirt. You will be guided to places and bring things to leave and set intention to them. These places want to be honored, and right now there's a lot of importance to us. This grid on Earth has a lot of shit on it right now. It's got a lot of junk. It's the last 2,000 years for the age of Pisces, and even prior to that, the last downfall of the Iron Age. Certain areas have been programmed, and clusters have a bunch of crap on them. So there's a cluster close to here. It's 3 hours southwest. It's where the Mormons built their first Mormon temple. And now if you look at it, every line coming off that cluster has a Freemason building on it. So wherever we are, this stuff is clearly important to whoever's trying to control things. And we remember that by connecting to nature and being in service to nature, that we can activate these places through our heart space and love. I just wanted to say that, because I felt like you were in this really great place with it, that nature exists without us controlling it, and if we can step out of our ego and receive with grace and ease and release with grace and ease, we will naturally be guided to these places intuitively, where we are meant to offer service and activations for ourselves and others, including our mother, Pachamama.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes second nature. It becomes natural. But there is a certain, I feel that unless it's already there, there is a certain level. In my experience, I feel like there's a certain level of our own healing that is always in attunement with the planet, but also just to get to that place of trusting, that place of listening to our own intuition and to trust it. Whether it's just in going on that nature walk and honoring and serving in whatever way, but also just in our day-to-day life, and that there's a certain tipping point that shifts when we've done enough listening to our higher self, when we know thyself deep enough, and we've come into alignment that we are not just this body and that we are connected to divine source and spirit, that becomes stronger, and that ability to really lean into the work that we may be guided to do with complete unattachment and allowing it to just show us. I think that is the most potent. That is the most potent. It's like I teach Reiki, and I remember even myself, even masters forget sometimes. There was a big email, this is like 3 years ago, a big email I was sending out, and Reiki said, okay, put the Hansha Shonen in there. So I did the little thing before I pressed the send, and you could feel the whoop, 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 and it was like, and I'm following the divine guidance, and I'm like, there you go, Hansha Shonen. Oh, don't you know, like 20 seconds later, here comes the mind being like, okay, and now I'm going to add in XYZ elemental P. But because the practice, the consciousness is there, I caught myself, and I could feel as soon as I started to add stuff, yes, the chi, the flow, the life force was still flowing, but it had almost shrunk the channels because I got in the way. And then, but I caught it, and I said, okay, thank you, Divine, for this awakening, for this deepening of this awareness that I already know, but I keep remembering. And so I then released my need to add extra, and then the bolts went up again. And for however long I was guided, and then I hit send, and I was like, okay, thank you. And it's that same thing of that, it's a balance, and I don't think we're ever going to, like, mess anything up, because there's a sense of whatever's really for the highest good is the energy that's going to run. So you can put all sorts of your own stuff in there, and it'll be like, okay, fine. And for the highest good, if that's supposed to add a dash of this or that, fine. But ultimately, the divine wisdom of Mother Earth is going to hold it down.
Absolutely. There are no mistakes.
Right.
Everything is meant to be.
Amen. And I was curious because I remember after our talk that you had sent me a little picture of, I live out here in the Coachella Valley, many folks know, and I know there's a fault line. There's the 10 freeway out here in the valley, and it's known that there's the major fault line, I think, that goes all the way up to San Fran. It's like the big one there. People are like, oh, when that one goes, Cali's going to sink into the ocean and all that. And I think that's the one you sent me. I was like, now, so fault lines, there's a correlation then with ley lines. Is that correct? Or can you speak on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I haven't plotted a lot of those, but I mean, if you think about Champion Style, San Andreas, yeah. So if you think about like how I was saying in the beginning, like Earth will naturally express areas of high chi or high power, places where they shift. Mount Kailash is close to the Himalayan range. That's the India continent subducting underneath Asia, so it's pushing it up as it goes. The Great Lakes Basin, it follows these ley lines that go down with the Mississippi River. So when you start looking at natural phenomena, Lake Baikal, which is I forget, I'm not going to say it right, but it's either like the oldest lake on Earth or the coldest and deepest lake on Earth. It's in Russia. That's on a major gateway. Shungite, if anybody's familiar with that, that comes from Lake Onega, which is one place on Earth, and that's on a major ley line cluster. Moldavite, which fell from space in the Moldau River in only 10 fields, maybe it was 14, I don't know, but I plotted them, like 90% of them were along these two lines, and that's it, that's the only place it exists. Libyan desert glass, another tektite that either fell from space or is from an old volcano, is on the edge of Egypt and Libya, and it's where these lines connect. So you start looking around, if we're just thinking it from our perspective, oh, we build on these spaces, well, Mother Earth is building and changing and growing all the time too. And as that energy comes in, it's just like how we have chakra points that activate different parts of her body and nadis that we can activate through breath work. She has points. The whole ring of fire in the Pacific is like connected, basically. If you look at where Hawaii is, it's on a major cluster, and their Mauna Kea, the biggest mountain, which is their most holy place, like that's right there. So you start seeing all of these correlations, coincidences, synchronicity around, and yeah, fault lines, volcanoes, water sources, deserts, they all are in attunement with this, as this is how her energy comes in. Like, she has her energy that comes out from the core, but celestial energy, it all meets in her auric field.
And really, we are that. We're an extension of that, and she's an extension of us. And yeah, our collective consciousness, the grid matrix, it feels like we're constantly interfacing, with the cosmic consciousness, the cosmic rays, the sun rays, the electromagnetic fields of the whole universe. Runvelo speaks about the Birkeland currents, which are the coronal mass ejections from the sun, which apparently are just this instantaneous plasma electromagnetic just jolt that affects the earth grids, that affects the earth electromagnetic field. And it's all the coherency, right? It seems that the more that we are just in tune and aligned with that which is naturally abiding, then nature can channel through us even greater wisdom, health, insight, that intuitive, download, that awakening to trust her. And I think it's interesting that you said a little while ago about some of the ley lines or the grid lines, and maybe having clusters of things that are not so helpful on them. And are you speaking about like heavy pollutive industrial sort of like businesses being set on these clusters, or what would that translate to being?
Well, I like how you brought up the coronal solar flare. So the sun is our star portal. It's part of the Kuxan Sum. That energy connects all the way back to the galactic sun or core. When that energy comes in, it's either the troposphere or the stratosphere. It comes in, and that's where lightning is made, and that's where this energy comes in, and it starts affecting the standing resonance of Earth, which is called the Schumann resonance, which is usually at 7.62, I think. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but it's been spiking hugely in the last, 10 years, up to 100 hertz a day. That is essentially, we are getting mega downloads from the sun, mega solar activation. And when the sun is doing that, it's getting activated because the sun has ley lines. It has its own auric field. Every planet, every star going all the way back. So this is the grid through which source energy moves and activates physical form. So we are feeling the galactic core's energy coming through our sun into Earth's troposphere and then into her core and resonating outward. So it's very important to understand that when we have these things like summer solstices with equinoxes or full moon equinoxes, these are activations coming from galactic core. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that needs to be cleared out going into these, and then a lot that gets integrated. And that's not just us personally, but within Earth too. So look at how huge it's a solar eclipse equinox, or solar eclipse. Prior to that was a full moon eclipse, I think, and then there's another full moon portal. Some combination of this hasn't happened in 2,000 years. I think you even mentioned that. So if we're looking at it with a major activation coming in 2,000 years, what does that line up with? Well, it lines up with the beginning of the age of Pisces, which is the age of the patriarchy, and it lines up with the age of Aquarius, which is the end of the age of water into air, the water bearer, even though it's an air sign. So we are purging on a collective level right now all this shit that no longer serves, and we're bringing in this sun code energy through the Schumann resonance. So there's a great Twitter bot that looks at all the Schumann resonance and posts it. Same thing, I got this earthing mat because in the wintertime it's hard to go outside and earth. And the days that I had felt really crazy or spacey were usually big days, and it just means that I'm ungrounded. So go outside, put your hands in dirt, get an earthing mat, watch that earthing movie if you haven't seen it. It's definitely very strong. It talks a lot about our electromagnetic connection to Earth. So if we are wearing shoes and staying inside and not touching dirt, we're pulling ourselves out of this electromagnetic frequency and falling further and further descending further and further into 3D. Maybe one day we'll be 2D as Minecraft if we keep in that direction. I don't know. Somebody mentioned Minecraft recently about this stuff. So that's what I want to talk about with that, and then bring it to what you're saying. So, yeah, there are places, almost all the places where nuclear bombs were tested or built were on lines or clusters. There's a huge one. I think Russia exploded the biggest test one, and that was like north of Russia, and it's on a big cluster. So you start looking at that. You look at organizations that don't serve the highest good and serve self. They tend to be on clusters. The Mormons had their first temple in Nauvoo. Salt Lake City is a major cluster. They have all their temples there. Then I plotted all their temples. They're all on lines or clusters. So really it's just like anything that is not serving the highest self of Earth and our highest selves, that is in service to self instead of service to others, that's what I'm referring to. So it could be something that's like, usually the natural disasters, I feel like that's usually just Earth being like either having a huge growth period or like grieving or releasing or being like put you in check, because it's like, no, this is not what it's about. It's not about controlling the weather so you can grow more GMO crops that people make money off of. It's about working in sync with Mother Earth to be in that present moment and to be in that present moment and like be with that prana and chi. I just saw, yeah, the Earth will always be okay, but we are part of the Earth, and we're not okay right now. So she might shake us off, but she doesn't want to shake us off. We're all in this together, and this is the shift right now. And if we don't shift with her, that means that this part doesn't exist anymore. So, you know, without getting too far into speaking on that aspect of it, like, I plotted many places on the grid between 500 and 1,000, and from things that are good to things that are bad. So it shows that in this time when you're called a conspiracy theorist or a crazy person, that if you actually do your own research and look through it yourself, you will find these patterns that repeat that are being used by people in power that are in service to self. So if they're using it, there's power to it, and let's not forget or think that everything is evil that we're told is, because it's all a matter of perspective and what you choose to put your energy towards. So with those things in mind and this work being called to it, the New Earth Activations group that we're all a part of, my intention for starting that was to coordinate groups of people around the Earth on celestial events to activate these points to shake the shit off and bring the rainbow energy back to the grid.
Yeah, and the rainbow energy, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Through our heart spaces.
Yes, and we think about the chakra system and the colors of the rainbow there, and I just have to sidetrack and say that you are very violet. I can see your aura around you, and it's beautiful, beautiful, shining violet. And ultimately, all the colors, thank you, are white light. And it's when we get that full-on activation all the way up the Sushumna, the crystalline tube that houses the spine, the chakras. As I teach, that's our energy lung. That's how the energy body breathes in life force energy, prana, chi. And so bringing it back to at the very beginning, we were talking about I was mentioning that there's a certain level of our own healing and self-mastery and knowing thyself, just so that there's enough of our own stuff, I call it, out of the way, so that we can have that different ability to have vision, to see through the veils, to get the ahas, and not have just the self-doubt, the self-hate, the whatever the stuff that might be going on, the addiction, or just things that would block us from creating the correct conditions to just have that fountain, to be a fountain for that life force energy to flow. And so, yeah, there's these beautiful tandem aspects that all work together. And I did want to ask you one more thing, and then we'll scroll through and we'll see if there's any questions. And maybe you caught them. I don't see them unless I have the glasses on. And so we'll have a look through. But just for anyone who's called and new to this or excited about this, I know we've covered a lot of different points today. But as well, is there anything, if you could wrap it up, like what would be your counsel, your guidance to someone who's like feeling called but is a little trepidatious about, following it? Like, what would you offer to them?
Just go outside and listen. Be still. Go outside and meditate and bring some offerings and be still. I often find that if there's deer near you, follow the path of the deer trail. They will lead you to sacred spaces. It might be a hard path to follow, but there's a reason that Cernunnos, the Lord of the Forest, is known as the male energy of Gaia and is associated with deer. The deer are sacred keepers of the land. They gently walk the land and aren't in harmony. I mean, not in our civilization, because we've made it a perfect paradise for them to basically eat and breed, but in their own natural state. So if there's an animal, if you see an animal, pay attention. Where's it going? Follow it. If you hear a bird call, go that way. Just be still and observe and connect. Go do some breath work, bring some sage, Palo Santo, whatever speaks to you, and bring some offerings and just go outside. I mean, you could do it gardening. Like, if you're not near woods and you're in an urban environment and you have a garden or there's a small park, it doesn't matter if there's people there or not. Just go be outside and be in nature and be in gratitude to be there. Like, that's really the key, is like expressing gratitude, because if you're in a mind state of thinking or ego or fear or what other people think, like, that's going to hinder your entire connection. So just really be present in nature. And that's step one. And as you are sitting in that space, it will come into you. Yes, exactly. Champion style. Like, pay attention to what is responding to you as you're in that moment. You'll be like, oh, maybe I'll see a coyote. And then there's the coyote. Well, follow that coyote. Be careful, though, because that's trickster medicine. So they like to get themselves in trouble and then make the trouble for themselves. So when you see a coyote, acknowledge that you're probably going to be doing something that's going to make you think twice about why you chose to do it.
Yeah, no, there's so many experiences I've had with students where we would do ceremonies with mushrooms or whatnot out here in the desert in Joshua Tree, and there, I remember there was one time. Often there was lots of love and light activations, but then there were also some teachings where we would go on our little path, just totally guided by the medicine. And my student wanted to go here, and I could just feel her, and she was like, "Do not cross."
Yeah.
And I was like, and so she will tell you, but you get to listen. You get to listen. Did a breeze just blow?
You make your choice. I mean, not all the Earth is big, and not every place is ready to be healed or wants your presence. So if you're if you're getting that intuitive feeling, leave it alone. If you feel like you're being watched, if all the birds go quiet, if you're in a space that it just feels off, don't stay there. Like, either you're being watched by an animal that's hunting you, or there's some other energy there that is not happy with you being there. So yeah, just really be present in that, and don't force it. Because, like, oh, I really want to go. Well, I had an experience where I really wanted to go somewhere, and it was really fucking scary and heavy, and I was called to that place, but I also kind of forced it. So you reap what you sow.
Yeah, and we learn, right? We learn if we're practicing impeccability and mastery. We learn and we get it, and then next time we go walk, we're that much more awakened and aware. And I feel then when we really learn, then there's an even deepening of the commune with Mother Earth, and she feels like, okay, you're listening. I'm going to give you a little bit more now, and I love that. It's like because you earned it. I know that's kind of a funny metaphor away, but it's like you've shown. You hold that reverence, and you're listening, and you're honoring, and you're paying attention. And so she's like, all right. That's been my experience when she's like, I'm going to invite you in a little deeper. I'm going to give you a little more nuggets of breadcrumb trails along your way. That's so important. It's so important. But we learn as we go, like me sending the Reiki and then adding stuff and then feeling that, oh, this is actually weakening the flow rather than adding to it, and then releasing and letting that life force flow. I'm so honored. I'm so grateful that you've taken time to be here today, and that our little communities can crisscross and cross-pollinate. There's so much information here. I pray that everyone is served on their path of self-mastery, of growth, of love, and of light. Check out the Purple Wizard at WizardTribe333. Any last words? You got about 20 seconds.
I'd just like to thank you and thank everybody for being here, and just happy to be in this space. We are all deprogramming and remembering, so I am just a student as much as anybody else, and I love to share this with everybody, so I'm always open to talk.